Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Eurostars webinar for Call 11 applicants. I hope that you can all hear me and see me. I'm sure, we just started, so I'm sure people are still joining. So in this case, I will just start with some practical information before we get into the webinar. So my name is Michaela Mayer from the Eureka Secretariat, and I'm joined here today with my colleague Alain, who will also be helping me answer your questions in the chat as the webinar goes on. Together, we're going to present to you today an overview of the Eurostars program. We're going to explain a bit more about the application form and especially the application platform to give you an introduction and some hopefully advice and recommendations for you when you are filling in your application and to help you with this process. So just to inform you that the webinar is being recorded and that you will receive a link to the recording of the webinar once the webinar ends. I think it is sent out about an hour after the webinar. This webinar will last around 1 hour to 1 hour and 15 minutes. So first we're going to do a presentation to you that will take around 45 to 50 minutes. And then we will have some time at the end for Q&A session. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please put your questions in the chat. We will try to answer as many as possible during the presentation, but then we will also take a look at the end. Don't worry anyways if your question isn't answered during today's presentation. In the upcoming days or weeks, we will reply to you via email. And as always, if you do have a question, then put it in the chat. And with that, I will begin with the presentation. So let's begin by looking at the topics that are going to be covered during this webinar. So this will include the submission dates, so when you can apply. We will also give you a brief introduction on what Eurostars is, so who can participate in Eurostars, what our eligibility criteria are, and how the funding and the legal and financial viability check works. We will then move on to a short overview of the evaluation process and when you will get the results. We'll also give you an overview of the application form, how it looks, as well as some advice and recommendations from us. And then we will, Alain will be showing you the submission platform, which is where you will be submitting your application. Another thing to note is that there are some things that are not covered in this webinar that you will have to search for the information by yourself. So in this webinar, we don't go over any specific national funding rules or procedures that need to be covered at a national level. These vary from country to country, so you do need to make sure that you are in contact with your national funding bodies, which can be done via the form on our website. And you can also check our call page, which does contain some more detailed information about each country's funding rules. Similarly, we do not cover in this presentation various intellectual property rules, which can also vary from country to country or region. For information on intellectual property, please contact the IP SME Help Desk or attend their webinars or general information days. In this webinar, we also do not go into detail about how to write your Eurostars proposal and what experts are looking for. There are separate webinars at national level, and there is an international webinar held on this topic, which I would like to draw your attention to the one being held tomorrow on the 9th of July at 10 a.m. Brussels time. This one includes hints from our independent experts about what they are looking for when they are reading a proposal and what they tend to find makes a good proposal. So if you're looking for specific information on how to write a good proposal, I would suggest to attend that webinar tomorrow. Lastly, in this webinar, we do not go over how Eurostars proposals are evaluated. You can find more information about this on the call page or on our website guidelines. So here there's a QR code to our resources page, Eurostars resources page, where you can find all the guidelines that contain all the information that you're looking for. So probably the most important information if you're looking to apply is when does the call open? So call 11 opens on the platform tomorrow, the 9th of July. This means that from tomorrow, you'll be able to go onto the platform and start your application. Altogether, there are 2 months that the platform is open, so you will have 2 months to apply until the 10th of September 2026 at 2 p.m. Brussels time. It is very important that you take note here that on the cutoff day, the 10th of September, you do not have the entire day to submit, so it's not until midnight. You only have until 2 p.m. Brussels time. So please use these 2 months to prepare your application so that you will be able to submit by this set deadline. Some advice from us is that we advise you to start the application process as early as possible so that you're able to contact us and your national funding bodies so that we can help you on time. Just so that you know, we cannot accept applications that are attempted to be submitted after the 10th of September at 2 p.m. Let's move on to a little bit about the Eurostars program, especially for those of you who might not have participated in a Eurostars project before. So Eurostars is part of the European Partnership on Innovative SMEs. The partnership is co-funded by 37 Eureka countries and the EU through Horizon Europe. Each year, there's around 250 million euro in public-private investment, and that goes to support around 680 organizations a year. Eurostars projects are collaborative and international with at least 2 partners from 2 different countries. They can be in any technological or market area, but they must be market driven. So the goal is to develop something that can be commercialized quickly, or in the cases of biotechnology, biomedical, or medical products, that clinical trials must start rapidly after the end of the project. While we see biological sciences, ICT, telecoms as the most popular fields, Eurostars is a bottom-up program, so we welcome projects in any technological backgrounds, from anything like agro-food, marine resources, and projects that you feel might not even fit into any of the specific technological areas that we mentioned. On average, a typical Eurostars project has 3 to 4 participants from 2 to 3 countries. It lasts around 30 months, and it has an average budget of 1.4 million euro. So when we're looking at who can participate in Eurostars, organizations from all Eurostars countries can participate. So you can see here a list of Eurostars countries. These organizations are eligible to receive public funding. All types of organizations are welcome: SMEs, large companies, universities, research institutes, and more. And even organizations outside of Eurostars countries can join projects, but for these organizations, they can only join on a self-funding basis, as they cannot receive public funding. So they have to make sure that they will be able to cover the project expenses for themselves. But it's really important that you go and check the eligibility guidelines and contact your national funding body in your country so that you can find out any specific national rules regarding your organization type. If you are still looking for suitable partners to join your project, we recommend reaching out to your local node of the Enterprise Europe Network, the EEN. Under the Partnering Opportunities tab on their website, if you search the keyword Eurostars, you may already find some funding opportunities for Eurostars in your field. I did check recently, and there was already almost 60 partnering opportunities that mentioned Eurostars as their keywords. So since we are talking about eligibility criteria, let's move on. So Eurostars imposes 7 eligibility criteria. All 7 are equally important, and your project must fulfill all 7 to be considered eligible to participate in the program. The eligibility check is the first step that happens right after submission, and only the eligible applications will progress to the next stages of the evaluation. So it is important that you check that your application fulfills all 7 of the eligibility criteria. So we're going to go through them now one by one. So the first one on the screen here is that your project must be led by an innovative SME from a Eurostars country. So as you can see, this contains various components. You're considered an innovative SME if you comply with the SME definition as laid out in the EU recommendation 361 from 2003. So this recommendation gives various ceilings on, for example, staff headcount, balance sheet total, and annual turnover. So you must meet these to be considered an SME in the Eurostars program. You can see here, but we also recommend reviewing this recommendation yourself to make sure that you understand it and that you know what you need to comply with. And also keep in mind, if your organization is linked with a larger group, then you will have to include the staff headcount, turnover, and balance sheet total from that bigger group in that total. So we recommend that you check this user guide and our guidelines for the SME definition. And we have also outlined there some detailed examples, explanation, and how you will calculate these ceilings. Then moving on, you are considered an innovative SME if your SME has the ambition to collaborate on R&D and innovation with international partners. So to develop innovation that can be rapidly commercialized. So to be considered innovative in Eurostars, an SME does not need to have a proven track record of R&D activities, but what is considered more important is that the SME has the ambition. This is then that the leading SME needs to be from a Eurostars country. Finally, so earlier you saw the list of Eurostars countries, but you can also find these on the call page. So that is the first one. Then our second eligibility criteria is that your consortium needs to include at least 2 independent entities. To understand if your organization is independent or not, please check our eligibility guidelines on our resources tab, where we outline what is considered as direct or indirect control. And if you still have any questions about the independence, you can reach out to us. Then the project consortium needs to involve organizations from at least 2 Eurostars countries, and at least one of these needs to be an EU or Horizon Europe associated country. All Eurostars countries are EU members or associated to Horizon Europe, except for Canada, Republic of Korea, Singapore, and South Africa. So please pay particular attention if you or a partner is an organization from one of these countries. Then the next 2 criteria are to do with the budget of the consortium. So the first one, the 4th eligibility criteria, is that the budget of the SMEs from Eurostars countries must be at least 50% of the total budget, excluding subcontracting. So if there is one SME in your consortium from Eurostars countries, if you exclude subcontracting from their entire budget, this should be at least 50% of the overall project budget. If there are multiple SMEs from Eurostars countries in your consortium, then their project costs altogether, excluding subcontracting, needs to be at least 50% of the overall budget. Please pay attention when you are doing this calculation that the overall project budget subcontracting is not removed, only the subcontracting from the SMEs from Eurostars countries, and also that the 50% is not rounded, as it needs to be exactly 50%. Again, you can find the calculation with some examples in our eligibility guidelines, and you can contact us if you are still unsure about the calculation. Please note that subcontracting amongst partners is not allowed in Eurostars, and this is a rule for all project partners, regardless of organization type. Then the next eligibility budget-related criteria is criteria 5, that no single participant or country can be responsible for more than 70% of the total project budget. This calculation includes subcontracting, so please pay attention to this difference. With SMEs, the subcontracting is excluded, but for participant or country budget, subcontracting is included. So just make sure that you pay attention and that you read through our eligibility guidelines when you're doing these calculations. Then the 6th eligibility criteria is that the project duration must be 36 months or less. And finally, the last eligibility criteria, 7, is that the project must have an exclusively civilian purpose. Now, this doesn't rule out the participation of military partners or the development of dual-use technologies, provided that the project itself in the Eurostars timeline focuses clearly on civilian applications. So just before I move on, one final tip from our side is that we see most projects failing eligibility criteria 4 and 5. So I really recommend that you do check your budget split. So I'm going to highlight here where most projects fail. As I said, a single participant or country exceeds the maximum participation budget. We see often that the budget of the SMEs from Eurostars countries isn't met, and that we often see that there is not a minimum of 2 Eurostars countries involved in the application. There is an eligibility checker available to use on the application platform. However, the eligibility checker only works when all partners have entered their information and marked their finances section as complete. So sometimes we see that this eligibility checker is not giving you the correct information, and that's likely because one of the project partners has not completed their finance section or has not marked it as complete on the platform. Only when it is marked as complete can the eligibility checker take this into account when making the calculation. So we also recommend that you do double check your calculations manually and that you don't rely completely on the online eligibility checker. Lastly, on the eligibility criteria, your answer to question 13 on the civilian purpose of your application is used to check the eligibility for that criteria. So please make sure that you provide the correct answer to this question. Otherwise, your project will already be deemed ineligible. Even if your project does have an exclusive focus on civilian applications, if you mark this question wrong and then you submit it, you will be deemed ineligible and you are not able to make any edits of your application form once the submission deadline has passed. It's important to note that your project must comply with all the eligibility criteria from when you submit in September until you sign your consortium agreement, and that will happen approximately 5 to 6 months later. So during the evaluation process, while it's ongoing, if there are any changes to your consortium or your project, then you must inform us as soon as possible, as any new information could have consequences on your eligibility. So let's move on to funding. So who can receive Eurostars funding? As I mentioned, organizations that are based in Eurostars countries can receive Eurostars funding. While organizations that are not based in Eurostars countries can participate, they cannot receive funding. So they will have to self-fund their entire contribution. For this, they will need to provide a self-funding declaration, and the template for this can be found on our website, again, in the resources tab that I mentioned before. Looking at funding for Eurostars countries, it is important to note that funding in Eurostars is decentralized. So this means that organizations don't receive funding directly from us at the Secretariat, but that each partner will receive funding from their own national funding body. These national funding bodies all have independent rules on which types of organizations can be funded, which activities can be funded, and what the rates and thresholds are for national funding. Since these rules can vary quite greatly from country to country, it is important that each of you in your consortium contact your national funding bodies to understand what the situation of your organization is and check at a national levels what activities can be funded and what funding rates and thresholds in your country are. Eurostars funding will likely not be able to cover all the costs of your project, so the consortium must also be able to fund the remaining costs of the projects themselves. At the same time, check if your country has funding available for this call. So for call 11, we already know that there is no funding available for organizations based in Brussels region of Belgium, in Cyprus, Israel, Italy, and Singapore. So please keep this in mind and make sure that you check with your national funding bodies before you start creating your application and spending time on it. Moving on to the evaluation process, I want to highlight one of the key steps of the evaluation, which is the legal and financial viability check. This check is done at a national level by the national funding bodies. The national funding bodies will check each organization that applies and passes the eligibility check that comes from their country. This means that each organization in your consortium will be checked at their respective national level. If any of the organizations in a consortium do not pass the legal and financial viability check, then the whole project application will be rejected. This is why we stress so much the importance of each partner in the consortium checking with their national funding body what is needed and what their national rules are, because if even just one partner fails this check, the whole application becomes rejected. During this check, the national funding bodies verify that the organization provided a valid commitment and signature form, which is a mandatory part of the application and a legal document that each organization in the consortium needs to provide. Since it is a legal document, it is important that an authorized legal representative of the organization is the one who signs this document. So please make sure that you start working on this early enough in the process so that you can get this signature ahead of the submission deadline. The national bodies will also check that the organization or organizations who declared themselves as an SME are checked to make sure that they comply with the EU definition of an SME, as we were describing earlier. So this is then verified by the national funding body during the legal financial viability check. They also check that the organization is indeed a legal entity in the country that they say that they are from, that the organization has not been convicted for fraudulent behavior. And then if the organization is located in the European Union or the European Economic Area, that it is not undertaking in difficulty based on Article 2, number 18 of the Commission Regulation number 651 from 2014. Or if it is located elsewhere, that it is not in a difficult financial situation, rendering it ineligible for funding according to national regulations. Again, here it is important that you are aware of this Commission regulation and what it means to be undertaking in difficulty, so that when you apply and you go through the legal and financial viability check, this will not be an issue. Then your national funding body will verify that the organization is compliant with the national rules to receive Eurostars public funding. Again, this is why it's important for you to contact your national funding body so that you are aware of national rules. In case that the organization is not compliant, the NFB will inform the organization, and while they are able to still participate in the project, they will then have to self-fund their entire part of the project, and they will commit to this via a self-funding declaration that must be submitted in quite a tight deadline. Finally, the national funding body will also verify that the organization has the financial capacity to support their part of the project costs. As I mentioned, Eurostars will likely not fund all of the project costs, so you will need to have everything in place to show that you are able to fund your part of the project costs. The assessment of your financial capacity is based on national criteria established by each NFB. So please make sure that you have all the information and documents in place that could be needed for your NFB to check this. You also need to check with your NFB about what kind of information is specifically required in your country. Let's take a look now at the whole evaluation process in Eurostars, which lasts approximately 3 months. After the application deadline, the first step then, as I mentioned, is the eligibility check, where all submitted applications are checked to see that they do fulfill the Eurostars eligibility criteria. The result of this check is shared with you within 1 week of the application deadline. All the eligible applications then progress to the next step, which is the legal and financial viability check that we just discussed, and also the remote evaluation, which runs in parallel to the legal and financial viability check. During the remote evaluation, 3 remote experts individually assess each application using their technical and market expertise, and they produce 3 separate individual assessments of the application. The applications then that pass both the remote evaluation and the legal and financial viability check and are in the top 200 of these progresses to the next stages. The results of this will be shared by the end of October. The next stage is another 2 steps running in parallel, as you can see here. The ethics review, where a panel of independent experts assess the ethical considerations of your application and they give an ethics opinion to your project. And then while this goes on, at the same time, the independent evaluation panel, a panel of technical experts, will compare the quality of applications and establish an overall ranking list of those top 200. After this step, you will receive the results by the end of November 2026, and then the funding process will start. In December 2026, you will be notified whether your project has been approved for funding at a national level or not. If your application is approved for funding, then you can begin working on your consortium agreement, which you will then need to submit within 6 weeks from the time that you received your funding results. Once the consortium agreement is submitted, you will then be able to start the project on the date that was agreed in the consortium agreement. Please be mindful that consortium agreements provisions can require a long time to be negotiated amongst partners, which may result in missing this 6-week deadline or in withdrawing the project once it has already been approved for funding due to no agreements on the consortium agreement document. So a tip from our side is that we highly recommend to work and collect information and signatures already that would go into this consortium agreement, eventually adding a clause that states that the document is valid and binding only in the case that the project will be approved for funding. So I will mention later which services can support you in your consortium agreement and writing the IPR provisions for that consortium agreement, but it is important that you start already considering what would go into your consortium agreement now at the application phase, even though it might seem a bit ahead of time. As I mentioned, after each step, you will receive a communication from us with your results. So after this is communicated to you at each stage, you will have the possibility to submit a redress request. However, it is important to remember that redress requests can only be based on a procedural ground. So please make sure when you are submitting a redress request that you are submitting it based on a procedural ground. For example, that the eligibility check was wrong or that there was a mistake in how the legal and financial viability check was performed. But for example, if you disagree with the opinion of the independent experts who assessed your application, that is not constituting a procedural ground for redress action. So I recommend that you check our redress request guidelines, and just an update here that from this call onwards, you send the redress request by email as a PDF version only. There is also a character limit on the redress request of 5,000 words, including spaces. So if there has been a procedural error, you should be able to clearly explain that error simply in less than 5,000 characters. In the case that your redress request does exceed that limit, only the first 5,000 characters will be taken into consideration. So moving on to the application form. The application form has 5 sections in total, including a partner-specific section. My colleague Alon later will show you these on the platform. The application form also has 2 mandatory annexes. So I've already mentioned these, but the SME declaration is mandatory for all SMEs in the consortium, as well as the commitment and signature form, which is mandatory for all our organizations in the consortium, not only the SMEs. There is also a possibility to upload some optional annexes, such as a Gantt chart and a technical annex of up to 10 pages. So these are documents to help you give the experts more information about your project to support their understanding of your project. However, please make sure that all the core information is covered in your application form and that you're using the technical annexes to provide additional information, such as a visual representation, for example, adding a graph or a use case in the technical annex, and that you take note that there is a page limit and a size limit to the optional annexes, so you will not be able to upload larger documents in these sections. The application also includes an ethics self-assessment. As mentioned, there is an ethics review during this process, so this is where your ethics compliancy is checked. The ethics self-assessment consists of 2 parts. So firstly, your response to question 14 of the application form. Are there any ethical or legal issues linked to the objective, methodology, and impact of your project? This is where you will explain how you plan to address any issues that you have identified. At the same time, you will need to upload an ethics issues table. This consists of the 12 ethics issues categories, and you need to indicate for each one whether they are raised in your proposal or not. And if yes, then you will indicate where they are raised and how you have dealt with them. The template for the commitment and signature form, the SME declaration, and the ethics table can all be found on our website in the resources tab of Eurostars or on the application platform when you are filling in these specific sections. You'll find a link there to these documents as well. The application form also includes questions on the SDG related impact and the integration of the gender dimension into your scientific method. So please note, something that I want to draw your attention to is if you have already applied to Eurostars in previous calls, you will now see that there are new word limits in some of the different sections of the application. So especially take this into account if you are planning to reapply with the same proposal that you have applied with before. You may need to rethink some of those sections and to reduce your word count. I wanted to highlight some of these parts of the application form so that you could look more into them and answer them, hopefully to the best of your ability. So here on the screen are some resources to help you understand what might be expected in each of these sections. We also have further guidelines on the ethics self-assessment and ethics appraisal process if you're looking for more information on that part. So for more information on the Sustainable Development Goals, you can find some links indicated here. I also wanted to highlight in particular the gender dimension because this is something that we have received feedback on a few times from the experts. In many applications, they find that this section gets overlooked. So please make sure that you are integrating the sex, gender, and intersectional analysis into your scientific method and that you are describing this in the correct part of your application form. So you should include the gender dimension in different sections of your method, and this goes beyond the genders of the colleagues working on the project, but rather the method, the scientific method overall. If you consider that the gender dimension is not relevant for the research and innovation of your project, then you need to clearly explain why. If you do need more information on this, please refer to the Gendered Innovations 2 report, which I've linked here, or the Gendered Innovations website, to see general methods as well as field-specific methods that with case studies on how to integrate the gender dimension into your proposal. When it comes to ethics, we do, as I mentioned, have our own guidelines, the ethics self-assessment guidelines and the ethics appraisal and Eurostars guidelines, which can be found on our website. Along with the ethics issues table that you will attach to your application. But if your application involves the use of AI, development of AI, then please read the EU AI Act, which came into full force since last year, so that you are able to explain in the ethics question the AI flow and how you plan to deal with AI, as well as protecting personal data in an era of AI. Further, I wanted to take this time to highlight the Intellectual Property SME Help Desk, which is the European Commission's first-line IP assistance service that is available for SMEs from the EU and SMP-associated countries that operate or intend to access target regions, markets, and look to improve their global competitiveness. All services by the IP SME Help Desk are free of charge. So if this is something that is relevant for you, you may want to begin reaching out to the help desk for more information, as being able to describe your IPR strategy is part of the application form under quality and efficiency question 12. So the IP SME Help Desk hold trainings, webinars, events, and they are available for one-on-one assistance via their helplines, which can be accessed via email, phone, web, or they will set up virtual meetings with you. Another recommendation that we have received from experts is to explain what a use case is if this is relevant to your project. So they are encouraging the creation of use cases where this is relevant. This is not a mandatory part of the application, but a use case can help experts to understand the flow of the service or device. Use cases define the project scope, requirements, and they build a roadmap. If applicable to your project, this can be included in the business case section or in the technical annex. If you are creating your use case, in it you must describe the main processes involved in your product or service as envisioned in the end user environment. So include who or what performs each step, where it takes place, and how these steps lead to the final outcome. Focus on the workflow and interactions. And in the end, we see that this could be a key inclusion to helping expert evaluators get a clearer picture of the user interactions and successful outcomes of your proposal. Lastly, the Participation Identification Code, otherwise known as the PIC, is a 9-digit unique identification number and is a mandatory field of the registration form for all partner organizations of the consortium. Without a PIC number, you will not be able to complete the registration, and therefore you cannot start, join, or submit a Eurostars application. Find here the guidelines for instructions on how to obtain or to retrieve a PIC number if you already have one through the European Commission's Funding and Tenders portal. So this portal is not run by us, so we recommend that you allow sufficient time to obtain a PIC number for your organization before registering and submitting your Eurostars application form. Please note that organizations already registered on the platform will not need to provide a PIC number unless they go and edit their organization details in the application form. Lastly, from my side, before we move on, we have included here our main recommendations to applicants. So there is a Word version of the application that is available on the Eureka website in the resources tab, as I mentioned. However, it is important to know if you are using the Word version to work offline initially that you can only apply to Eurostars by submitting the online application form, which must be completed on the Eureka project management platform. So you can use this Word document to start your application, but we really recommend that you work on your online application at an early stage. So do not wait until the last few days before the submission deadline to begin working on the online version of your form. Allow yourself plenty of time to get familiar with the platform, to invite partners to the platform, and get any signatures that you need on those documents that I've mentioned well ahead of time. Further, as I said, we are here to help as well as your national project coordinators, but please do allow enough time for a response if you require assistance. So the main point here is to just start as early as possible on your application, start thinking at the earliest stage possible, and start getting in touch with us and your national funding bodies as soon as you can. So now I will hand over to my colleague Alon, who will give you a bit of an instruction on how to use the platform and guide you through submitting your application on the Eurostars platform. Thank you, Alon.
Thank you, Michaela. So let me share my screen so everyone can see again. I hope you can see and hear me well. So good morning, everyone. And thank you, Michaela, for the presentation so far. So now you got all the information on the program, but how actually to do so? So how actually to apply to our Eurostars Call? I will explain you now how the platform looks like and how it works in order for you to submit your applications. So moving on the platform itself, you can reach it at www.myeurekaproject.org. It is the platform that we use to call EPMP, the Eureka Project Management Platform. Please note that you're only able to submit one application per project on EPMP submitted by the main partner. Once you access the platform, you will see this page I'm displaying at the moment. You will have to click on competition listing link under I want to create a new application. This is how you will see the upcoming call. You will choose call 11 from the list of the upcoming calls. After you've chosen your call, you will click then on start new application. And this is how you will actually start your application. Since the call will open later this week, after the day, which is on Friday, you will be able to click on start a new application button. You will first have to log in if you already have an account, or you will have to create a new account. If you already have an account, you can sign in by entering your email address. The platform will send you a verification code, and you will have to enter this code in the platform. Please check carefully your spam and junk email folders carefully to retrieve the email. If the code have expired, which normally is about 15 minutes later having requesting it, please request a new one and the platform will send you a new one to the same email. In case you have any issue, check also with your company firewall settings and contact your IT. When you start an application, it is very important that the leading SME registers first. So the main applicant must be an SME, as my colleague Michaela mentioned before. So it must be this SME registering first on the platform, as it's just the SME that can start the application on the platform. After the application has been started, then the other partners can be invited by the leading SME to join the application and to register on the platform. When you choose your organization type, it will be innovative SME. Moving on, when the leading partner wishes to invite the project partners, they can do this in the application team section under the application overview as shown in the slide. If you click on the application team section, you will see two buttons, one to add a partner organization and another one for you to add a person to a participating organization. For both, the person invited will receive an email from the platform inviting them to register to the platform. You will have to click on that link in order to be able to join correctly the application on the platform. Anyone from any of the organization can add a new person to their organization, and the main partner can add any person to any organization of the consortium. This is a useful feature also because the application is collaborative and several different partner organizations and several people from this organization can work together at the same time on the application form on EPMP. However, it is the main partner that can assign the specific question section to the various organization, and we will see in this slide how they can do so. There is one part of the application that cannot be completed by the main partner, and that is the project finances section, which is partner specific, which means that each partner must complete this from themselves and cannot be asked the main partner to do so, and includes your project finances, which I will talk about again shortly. For each section on the platform, you will notice that there are tips on how to answer each question. One tip from us, very important, and we recommend you to keep a copy of the guidelines next to you. These guidelines cover how to complete an application, and you can refer always to them because they contain further instruction and guidance that can be very useful when you write down your application in the platform. Please keep also an eye out the word count as there is a word limit in a section. You can see this on the bottom of the text box as you see in the slide. And keep in mind that some special characters can confuse the word count, so it may not be displayed correctly on the platform. If you have already applied before call 11, be mindful that the word count limit has changed from call 11 onwards. When you're answering a question in a section, you will see then two buttons, the green save and return to your application overview button, and then the mark as complete button. If you're still working on the answer or if you're still working in the section in general, then click on save and return to your application overview button. That section will still display as incomplete and your application overview page, but your information has been saved. You can go back and edit this information anytime before you submit the application. If you click on Mark as complete, the second button, then this section will display as complete. Before submitting your application, all the section will have to be marked as complete. So you cannot submit the application without having marked as complete all the section. Don't worry if you realize that after you have clicked marked as complete, you see that you need to change anything or anything needs to be edited. Before submitting, you can still click into the section and edit the section, and then you will mark it again as complete and you will be able to submit the application. Another one of the main parts of the application is the work package section. It is important to note that only the main partner can create or remove a work package, but as with the other section, they can assign them to the other participant, the other partner, the other organization after creating them. As mentioned before, there is the section called Your Project Finances that is partner specific, which means that each partner needs to complete this section for themselves individually, as this also contains confidential information from each company. In the first section of your project costs, you will have to put your cost per each work package. Note that this is linked to the work packages overview, so you only become available after the main partner has marked the work package as complete. Note, in addition, that anytime a work package is edited by anyone in the consortium and marked as complete then again by the main partner, then the project cost will have to be marked as complete by all the partners again. Please pay extra careful attention to this and make sure that everything is marked as complete ahead of the submission deadline. This is a very common mistake for participants that are applying last minute, and normally they don't consider and they are not able to reach the 100% completion percentage on the platform before being able to submit it. If any NFP national funding body impose rules at the national level, such as cost, project management, and so on, affect your application. So any related decisions that you want to take because they are imposed by your national and national funding body, you must clearly explain them in the application so that the evaluators can properly take them into account. Keep in mind that the remote evaluators are not expected to know the reason for specific national decision on budget or work packages, for example, unless you clearly explain them in the application form. So you have to take a decision on project management costs that may not be eligible, and that's the reason why they are not displayed in your project costs. Then this must be detailed to the evaluators because they must know from you the reason why you have taken this decision. Under your financial information section, you will have to put your financial information for up to 2 years. In case you're a startup, you can provide estimates. In this section, it is very important that you check with your national funding bodies to see what is required from you regarding the financial information and if you have to upload financial annex and what would need to be included in this financial annex. So please always get in contact with them ahead of time to check with them what is needed at the national level for you to upload. If you're not requesting Eurostars funding, namely public funding, it means that you will be covering all the project costs on your own. You must upload a self-funding declaration with the application form under your funding. So as you see, you do need to upload the document, which must be signed by the legal representative of your company. Regardless your funding decision, whether you're going to ask for public funding, whether you're going to self-fund your participation, there are 2 mandatory annexes that you must upload with your application form. The links to download the template for both can be found on the application form under the section and on our guidelines. Each organization in the consortium must upload a commitment and signature form duly signed. And then for each SME in your consortium, it is also mandatory to upload an SME declaration duly signed by the legal representative. Also, during the application process, at any time, you can run an automatic check on the eligibility of your application using the check eligibility button on top of your application overview page. If you click on this button to check the eligibility, then the platform will give you an overview of the 7 eligibility criteria that my colleague Michaela explained you before, and if they have been fulfilled or not at that specific time. Please note that even if one or more criteria are not fulfilled, then the platform will still let you submit your application, but your application will not be considered eligible. The platform uses the data available that has been marked as complete at the time that you run this check. So please double check your eligibility by other means or by manual calculation. For example, checking that you fulfill the eligibility criteria of the budget or the 50% of the SME, and you do not only rely on the check function on the EPMP platform. As I mentioned, all the fields must be marked as complete for you to be able to submit the application, and this needs to be done by the main partner. Then the main partner marks all the section as complete and submits the applications. Once you have checked all the information is correct and the main partner can submit, they will also, all the partner receive a confirmation that the application is submitted. After it is submitted, all the partners will still have access to their application on their dashboard to view it or to print it. You will have to go on the dashboard in the application platform, and from here you will be able to access it. You cannot edit your application after you have submitted it. So after the main partner will click on submit application and the subsequent pop-up that comes up, you can only edit the contact details, but not anymore any other information. So this is everything about the platform and the submission of the application on EPMP. We now move on with some frequently asked questions related to this topic. So the first one is, what if my application has a mistake? Please keep in mind, as mentioned before, that no changes can be submitted, can be done if you have submitted your applications. Only the contact details can be edited by yourself. In case you are within the application deadline, so before the 10th of September 2026, in case of call 11, you can still submit a new application. You need to inform us by email at applications@eurostars-eureka.eu with your number and the title of the application to let us remove the old, wrong or old application. After this, you can submit a new application, but note that you will have to do a manual copy paste of the information from one application to the other. So take this also in consideration, as some time is needed to mark as complete all the section of the application form. It is in the case of resubmission. So is it possible to resubmit an application that was not successful? Yes, it is allowed, but you need to start a new application and copy paste the content, as I mentioned before, in case you want to change your application after you have submitted. How can we find project partners? My colleague Michaela mentioned before, but I will highlight this again. You can contact your national funding body, because at the national level may be in the position to give you some network advices or some national developed platforms at the national level to look for partners. But we also recommend the matchmaking tool that you have on the EEN, the Enterprise Europe Network website. You can look directly for partners and search for Eurostar as a keyword. Please note that there are already on the platform as of today organization looking for Eurostar 3 project partners for this call. So have a look. Is there a list of funded projects, an example of successful projects in general? Yes, they are on our website, can be found on eurekanetwork.org, and their stories are published on our blog, which we recommend you to have a look to. That's it from my side. I will now pass the presentation back to my colleague Michaela. We'll finish up with some frequently asked questions in the chat that might be worth it to tackle together. And then we will open the floor for some other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alain. So if you have any questions about the platform and using the platform, please leave them in the chat and we will get back to you either at the end of the webinar, or we will reply to your question in the coming days, as I said at the beginning. So on this slide here, I have added some of our contact details, a link to the form for contacting your NFBs, which is also available on our website. And we have included the link to our resources tab on our website, which is where you can find all the guidelines that we've mentioned that will help you in applying to the upcoming call. I've also included here a link to the IP SME Help Desk. They have a whole page of resources on IP in Europe. One resource that might be of particular interest is IP in EU-funded projects with regards to your consortium agreements. As I said before, you should already begin thinking about the consortium agreement now at the application stage, as intellectual property is an important aspect of that. So this could be a good resource for you to check out. Again, the IP Help Desk is free of charge, and they are available via email, phone, and virtual meetings for questions and advice. And lastly, I will again highlight the upcoming webinar that is taking place tomorrow, intended to help applicants in writing their proposal, guided from the point of view of an expert evaluator and what they are looking for. So with that, this is everything that we have prepared for you today. We will start a question and answer session in 5 minutes. So in the meantime, I'm going to switch off my camera and look at the chat so that I can highlight some of the most commonly asked questions and give you an answer right now to some of those. So if you have not already, please take the time to put your questions in the chat and we'll return to those in 5 minutes, maybe even 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, thank you. Okay, there are a lot of questions in the chat, so I don't think we're going to be able to get to them all, but I will try to answer the ones that we have seen recurring. I've also just put the slide back so that you can access the QRs for the IP SME Help Desk and the registration link for the webinar happening tomorrow. So something that I saw a lot in the chat was asking about sharing the slides. So we don't share the slides with applicants, but we do share the recording. So if you are registered for the webinar, you will receive the recording, which does contain the slides, and that should be sent out within 1 hour of the recording. If by tomorrow you have not received the webinar recording, let us know and we'll be able to send that to you. So I hope that put some ease in your mind that you will definitely receive the recording of the webinar. Then something that I have seen and I want to talk about a little bit is the use of AI by applicants in their application. So in Eurostars, there is no restriction against the use of AI when applicants write their application. But something that we have noticed and that we have heard as a feedback from our remote experts, as well as the independent evaluation panel and the ethics experts, is to advise you to just be careful with your use of AI in your application. I understand AI can be a useful tool, but if you rely too heavily on generative AI in creating your application, it creates a circular sounding application, an application with words that go way over what is necessary to explain what you are trying to explain. And we have seen cases where the AI even hallucinates or generates something that wasn't even the intention of the applicants. And then later on, the applicants try to argue against something that the remote experts have said that they believe wasn't in their application. But in the end, this was something that was in their application, and it is likely because they over-relied and didn't oversee their use of AI. So please be careful when you are using AI to write your application, that you do not over-rely on it, and that you are still aware of what you are putting in your application. I also want to let you know that once this webinar ends, you will be sent a link to a satisfaction survey. This is just another way we are trying to get a bit of feedback on what we can improve for this survey, what information you felt like was missing, what we can add for the next one that will be more helpful for you as an applicant. Then something that I saw a lot was a lot of questions about your specific situation, whether you are an SME who is just being incorporated like this month or last month, whether you are linked with another organization, what your expenditure is, and your definition of an SME. So for all of these types of questions, I would say, especially SME questions, have a look at the EU recommendation on SMEs. If you are worried that you're an SME, but you have a partner or a linked enterprise, make sure you review the section on linked enterprises as well. And then if you are not sure about if you would pass as an SME in your country, or if you would be considered in undertaking difficulties, again, this is a legal status that you should familiarize yourself with, then I recommend that you contact your national funding body, because for all of these things like your SME status, your linked status, your turnover, your undertaking in difficulties, all of this is reviewed during the legal and financial viability check by your national funding bodies. So we do have guidelines on this, but it is important, if you want specific advice for your specific situation and your organization, that you contact your national funding body in your country, you explain to them the situation, and you find out, do you qualify as an SME? Do you qualify as a linked or partner organization? Would you pass the undertaking in difficulties definition? And do you have the financial capacity to support your part of the project? So these are all questions that you should communicate with your national funding body as soon as possible, so that you can get an idea of whether you can participate or lead a Eurostars project. Another question that I saw was on letters of support or letters of intent. These can be included in the annex if that's what you wish to use that space for. But remember that the all the information of your proposal should be included in the main body. So if you're going to refer to letters of intent and include them in the annex, make sure that you write that you have this letter of intent in the body of the proposal, and that then you attach this in the optional annex, the technical annex. Another question that I saw, especially regarding clinical trials and clinical research, was whether Eurostars would fund early research. Eurostars doesn't have a specific TRL. However, we tend to recommend that because we fund close to market research, that your project should begin at around a TRL 4 and it should end around TRL 6 or 7. So we are not, Eurostars is not really for funding early research. Then I saw some questions about resubmissions. So resubmissions are allowed in Eurostars. However, you do need to check if you are a resubmission of a running project that you have the financial capacity to support this new project and that you are not at risk of double funding. So if you are doing a double funding, then you will not be able to get funding from Eurostars. So again, this is something that you can check with your national funding body. So if you have applied to Eurostars before, but you do not have a running project, your resubmission is considered a completely new submission and it undergoes the process as any other submission would. But if you have a running project, you need to be able to prove that you have the financial capacity for another project and that you are not at risk of double funding. So that's on resubmissions. Then there were a lot of questions about the eligibility criteria and the budget related criteria. So I can go back to these in the slideshow to maybe show you them again. So for eligibility, the two budget-related points are 4 and 5, that the budget of the SMEs from Eurostars countries. So this is all SMEs. So of course, every Eurostars proposal has a lead SME, but in many cases, there are multiple SMEs. So because we are an SME-focused program, this eligibility criteria makes sure that the main budget of the project is in fact coming from SMEs. So the budget of the SMEs from Eurostars countries, excluding anything that they are subcontracting out, so anything that is not done by the SMEs themselves, must be at least 50% of the total project budget. In our eligibility guidelines available on our website in the resources tab, you'll be able to find some more information about how you can do this calculation, as well as some specific examples. And then you can also refresh on what a Eurostars country is as well. And then eligibility criteria number 5 is that no single participant or country can be responsible for more than 70% of the total project budget. So in this case, that does include subcontracting. And again, this is because Eurostars is an international program. It is aimed at international collaboration. So it would make no sense if one project partner had an overwhelming majority, or one country had an overwhelming majority of the project activities and the project budget to themselves. So that's these two criteria. Again, they are available in the resources library under the eligibility guidelines. So that is those two parts of the eligibility check. I'll go back here. Then let's see. I think I see some questions sometimes about people asking what are like success rates and where can they find data, success stories. I think Alon mentioned it as well, but on the website under we have a tab called data. You can find there all of the Eureka programs, but specifically for Eurostars, you can see how many projects were funded in each call, and you can see which countries the partners come from. There's a PDF document that you can download to see all of Eurostars 3, what types of projects are being funded. We also post this regularly on our LinkedIn. We also have a newsletter where we post for each call ongoing, like how many applications are submitted and what technical backgrounds from which countries. And again, when we know what the funding is, this will be in the newsletter as well, of how many applications ended up being funded, from which countries and in which technological backgrounds. But excitingly, in our newsletter as well, you can find success stories that we spend a lot of time curating. So if you are interested in seeing some of the highlights of Eurostars success stories, I would recommend to subscribe to our newsletter, which you can also find on the website. I think there are still lots of questions coming in, but I think we are almost at the end of our time anyways. And we will get to your questions over the next the coming few days or week. So please be patient with us. And if we do not answer your question, you can contact us there at applications@eurostars-eureka.eu, and we will happily answer any questions that you have. So with that, let us bring this webinar to a close. And again, I will mention this webinar is recorded, so shortly after this is finished, you will be sent a link to the recording, so you are able to rewatch any of the parts that you felt you didn't fully understand. And also, please make sure that you submit your feedback via our satisfaction survey. It will really help us in improving this webinar going forward for the next time. Remember that we are available for all of your questions for the next 2 months, and your national project coordinators are also available for any questions that you do have. So once again here, I'd like to remind you that the deadline for submission is 2 p.m. Brussels time on the 10th of September 2026. And again, my last piece of advice is please do not leave your submission until the last minute. So make sure that you begin familiarizing yourself, talking with your partners, and writing your application as soon as possible. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for your questions, and we wish you the best with your application submitted in September. So thank you. Bye-bye.